Many thanks for those kind words. And I would also like to thank Professor Ayappan for an extremely learned and informative lecture, packed with all kinds of information. And if I may say so, to absorb all that after lunch was not easy, but it was certainly most stimulating. I'm going to talk about something else. Not about the progress we have made in the field of agriculture or agricultural science. I want to talk about pure sciences. And by pure sciences, it's not my term. I'm going to talk about forms of inquiry where the purpose is not immediate profit or application, but the pursuit of theoretical knowledge. And if you take fundamental science and define it as an exploration with a view to developing theoretical knowledge, what is India's record so far? And my own conclusion, which was half anticipated by my good friend Thomas, is that our record is rather poor. So I want to do three things. Say something about our record. Is it the case that it is poor? B, why is it poor? And C, what is it that we can do about it? These three have interested me for the last 20, 30 years that I have worked on India, and these are the issues I have raised steadily and relentlessly on the Prime Minister's Advisory Committee. That in a knowledge-based economy, a country like ours will be left far behind by smaller countries like South Korea or Israel, or even smaller countries, if we do not keep pace with others, let alone outpace them in fundamental sciences. If you look for, our record is reasonably good when it comes to applied technology, solving practical problems. We have fairly reasonably large number of patents taken out on the international as well as national market. But if you look at biological sciences, biochemistry, epidemiology, or if you look at fundamental natural sciences, theoretical physics or mathematics, and since I define pure sciences not just in terms of natural sciences, but theoretical inquiries, if you look at disciplines like mine, philosophy, what has India got to show during the last 60 years? And I would be hard put to point to anything, any significant contribution of a concept or a theory, or if I were to ask, as I was asked at Oxford many years ago, Professor, tell me, who is the most prominent Indian philosopher of last 50 years whom we should read to get some idea of what India is struggling with? And I had some difficulty coming up with a name. He said, mention one book to me after 1947 which I can read and which will give me some insight into the major debates that are going on in India. And I was hard put to find any. Look at humanities, history. You have something to show in history. But if you look at social sciences, political science, I would say that our record is rather disappointing. And it's shown in a variety of ways. Thomas talked about international journals. If you take citation index, show me which one of the major Indian scientists is cited more than 2 or 3 times. First of all, it never gets published, or cited more than 2 or 3 times in any international journal. And I asked 2 of my sons to do a little checking for me, because both of them are professors at Oxford. One in biochemistry, the other is in cardiovascular physiology. They publish in all the top journals, Nature, Cell, American Journal of Biology, European Journal of Biology. I said, tell me, will you do a little research for me? Will you tell me how many from India publish? And as to quote Thomas, abysmally low. Diaspora, there is no problem. People writing from within India. And it's not that we don't have equipment, which used to be the old excuse. Dr. Bhattacharya, the chairman of the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, recently said, in India, there is no lack of money if you want to do something. It's always the lack of trained people and lack of ideas. So the question to ask is, our record is relatively poor. If I were to ask you, one simple test is, what are the eminent journals in any field which are published here, where foreign scholars submit their papers and want us to publish? I can't think of any in any discipline. Maybe one or two, but certainly not in the sciences. So I hope I have said enough to show that our record is relatively disappointing. Next question is, why has this happened? And I think there are several reasons responsible for this. And in case some is tempted to say, oh, but look, we are a developing country, only started 65 years ago. Only 65? 3 generations of people. It's not only 65. More important, if you look at China, South Korea, Israel, these countries were even far behind us. How come they have been able to turn the corner when we have still not found the right direction in which to go? So, next question, why have we not been able to do as well as we should have? And I would say there are 5 or 6 factors. And since I've only got about 10 minutes, now only about 5, I'm going to rush through them pretty quickly, and if you have questions, I'll be happy to elaborate. First, I think our scientific training is relatively poor. It's very like rote learning. Science is not about what you take to the lab, or what you do in the lab. Science is about what you take with you to the lab, and what you take out of the lab with your findings. In other words, science is not merely about collecting scientific knowledge. It's a training of the mind, learning to ask certain kinds of questions. And that is something which is extremely poorly done, which I discovered when I first went to London School of Economics 55 years ago, and taught by the greatest philosopher of science of the 20th century, Karl Popper. Remember attending his seminar on the very first day and suddenly made to look an idiot. Although I had done my MA, I was a university lecturer, I had never learned to think. Over the years, I have had students even from our finest universities like JNU. And I can tell you, compared to my undergraduates in my own university, some of them were extremely disappointed. The first question they would ask you, Professor, what should I be working on? My students, English students, would never ask that. Or if I give a topic, my students would know how to go to the library and how to prepare a bibliography or what to read. The Indian student would always say, but look, where shall I start? So the first question is, there's a lot of scientific rote learning, but very little tendency to ask critical questions, to think of oneself and to think theoretically. Because science is about thinking theoretically. Second factor I would hold responsible is poor leadership. A great deal of bureaucracy in our science institutions. I mean, I have heard this from a number of people, and I experienced this myself when I was a Vice Chancellor. I was struck by the fact that some of our finest students were stuck. There are 2 or 3 very eminent scientists today in biological sciences from Baroda University, whom I had to liberate from their heads of department and send them abroad before they would rise and flower. Stuck in the universities, there was no hope for them. Third, I think we have a large number of resources, but they are diffused. You can't develop great centers without concentrating your resources, human resources and material resources. Fourth factor has to do with the insularity. We are one of the very few countries, and I told this to the Prime Minister, and he tells me that under the law this is inescapable. We have never advertised our positions abroad. China does, Malaysia does. If I have a professor of philosophy in the University of Baroda when I was Vice Chancellor, and I said I want to get the best philosopher from all over the world, let's advertise in Times Literary Supplement or New York Times, I was told, no, you can't. You can't recruit a foreigner. Full stop. And I remember attending a meeting where Lee Kuan Yew, the Prime Minister of Singapore, was once there. He turned to me and said, Professor, tell me one thing, why are you Indians so racist? I said, racist? That's the last thing I would say about my people. You see, you don't employ, in your universities, you don't employ people from outside. I employ them left, right and center and get the best out of them. And then throw them out. In other words, he said, your forefathers had the wisdom to get Mountbatten, and he gave this example, Lord Mountbatten to stay on as a Governor General and clear the wretched mess that he had created. And having used him, you said, you can go now. He said, I thought that was the best among the Hindus. Use wherever there is knowledge for your purpose and then let go. How come you don't employ people from outside? But we have never done. And I have raised it again and again with the Prime Minister, and I am told, under the law, a non-Indian, a foreigner, cannot have a permanent job. I can understand, government must have its own reasons. I don't buy them, but that's one thing. But what about the NRIs? And there are lots of us. Why can't they, who have shown abroad, have some commitment to the country, use them in a systematic way and employ their services? So that, for example, they should be able to come here on a 5-yearly basis for 6 months each year. London School of Economics does, Oxford does, with lots of people, but we don't do that. And it's very striking that if you take any university in China or Hong Kong or Singapore which has turned the corner and is on the move, all of them have high, what is called international faculty ratio. They have gone left, right and center and collected top international faculty. National University of Singapore, hardly anyone heard of it 15 years ago. Today it is ranked number 24. And the number of foreign faculty, 94%. Hong Kong University, 46 in the world order.